Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Esoteric Agenda. I'm Roger Hanson, your host, with my co host, Mark Edworthy. Tonight we have with us B, as well as my brother, Robert. Welcome, guys, and uh, we'll get on with the show. So I'm gonna do I'm gonna take a little bit of a left turn with this. I've been going through and talking about things like the OTO and Aleister Crowley and specific things. Like I've also talked about the Emerald Tablets and stuff. But tonight I want to get a little bit deeper into it and talk about things like tonight's theme is number before matter, for example. Okay, and I, I also wanted to. I also put in there why the ancients believed reality was made by mathematics or made of mathematics, and that's when Mark Edworthy asked what the ancients were, and I told him he had to come on the show to understand. So this is where I start talking about it, Mark. This is what I refer to when I say the ancients. Okay. This goes back for thousands of years, okay? And when I talk about the ancients,
Um,
I'm talking about
actually,
I'm talking
Funny enough, the first thing when you say the ancients on the chat earlier, the first thing I was thinking was some sort of primitive tribe in Latin America or sub-Saharan Africa. Unless, yeah.
well, once
So
I get this out and everything, you decide if they were primitives from South Africa or freaking from the different areas, because this has to do with like a lot of civilizations that span across the world. Okay. And they all reached like this really extraordinary conclusion, and it was all independent of one another. It wasn't like a specific, civilization at all. It didn't matter if it was like Egyptians or Greek or the or India, people from India, or I don't even know how to say it, Indian, I guess, or Mesopotamian.
you're talking about cultures that had some relatively high development
No,
civilization.
now, see, civilizations are determined by the only thing that determined a civilization, separated it from a culture, was that when they could actually have their own writing system. Cultures are determined because of, well, the cultures, but then to become a civilization, they had to develop a form of writing.
When I was thinking about civilizations, I'm thinking about sort of buildings and architecture. When it came to maths,
Mm-hmm. Well, that too. You had, like I said, people from India, Greece, Egypt, and the Mesopotamians. Okay. Now, a lot of the philosophers and the priests back then believed that the universe was not held together by physical objects alone, but by like this invisible relationship, which was expressed through numbers. Okay. Now, to the modern mind, mathematics is usually thought of like as a tool invented by humans to describe the world. Okay, that wasn't the way it was with the ancient world. Mathematics was something that was entirely different. It was discovered rather than invented, according to them. You know what I mean? So they believed that numbers existed before the war before humanity, and that the universe behaved according to like mathematical principles. They honestly did believe that.
Well,
So
actually, you know what? Can I
uh
can I jump in here?
yeah.
So something. in my little personal conflict with the NSA, they have a code name for me. They call me the Answer Man because I typically get out of any situations they put me in or present me with, or or they watch me solve problems that just seem unsolvable. And they've literally asked me, like, how do you come up with all these answers? And I tell them, well, it's my philosophy, my personal belief, and the way I perceive reality is that the answers exist before the problems do. So anyone can come up with a problem, an issue, the answer already exists. So that is the way mathematics works. Also, I've actually been, it's kind of funny that we would be talking about this because I've been studying. I'm always into quantum mechanics and looking at things, and something I've come across is these. So there's these guys, several scientists. There's like 44 of them. They all claim it's real. It has yet to be debunked, but there's 44 different scientists who have been experimenting with a laser. Now, this laser is supposedly under the influence of DMT. When you look at this laser, uh, code flies off the laser. They're saying there are millions of different glyphs, and that it's actually decoding reality. So something that you guys might want to look into. I wish Otto was here. I know he'd be interested in this, but it has been uh, there's several testimonies by these scientists, and these scientists they are all in agreement that they are not under hallucination. However, they are put into a mind state where extra reality comes in, and they're actually able to see code through certain light, and it just flies off of objects, anything the laser hits, and it's decoding reality. So that is sort of in line with what you're saying,
Yeah,
I think.
it really is because okay, now when I said that it was discovered rather than invented, okay, that's the way they felt, okay. Um, and they also believed that numbers existed before humanity and that the universe behaved according to mathematical principles. And you got to understand that like this distinction is fundamental, all right, because it changes how people view reality, like you were just talking about with reality itself, okay. So if mathematics is just merely like a language created by people, then it exists just inside of the human mind, okay. Now, if mathematics exists independently of us, then reality itself might be mathematical at its foundation, you know. So, and this question, honestly, it still remains one of philosophy's oldest and most fascinating debates. They still debate over this stuff. Okay, you'll hear it being talked about all the time. And yeah, I mean, I liked what you said there. It did fit right into exactly what I was getting at, you know. Because you take a look at like the Egyptians, okay. Now the Egyptians they rarely separated mathematics from religion at all. Geometry was necessary for like rebuilding property boundaries after the Nile flooded each year, and the same geometry was used when constructing temples. You know what I mean? And to them, it determined like the orientation towards the stars, the pyramid angles, which, by the way, was built plumb. And I've said this before. There's very few people today who can even build an outhouse that's plumb. I mean, that's how precise it is. And this is like just like millimeters freaking off. You know what I mean? And they did that with the pyramids angles. And then when you turn around and you look at the sacred proportions of everything, and then the ritual architectures. You start getting into like sacred geometry, which is something that I'm wanting to get into here in the next few episodes of this, because I don't think too many people cover sacred geometry like they really should, and I think that would be a good topic, you know.
Agreed.
But getting back to the Egyptians, you know, geometry represented Ma'at, which was the divine principle of order, harmony, and truth and balance, you know. And the act of measuring land became like an act of restoring cosmic order to the Egyptians.
No, you are so on fire today, Roger. So the Egyptians, who have had a very heavy influence in early Christianity and even pre-Christianity with Gnosticism. And the reason why I love Gnosticism so much is because it coincides. The cosmology itself coincides with physics. The Big Bang is described in the cosmology. You know, they say the flesh is evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
The flesh is of a perverted mathematics. So I'll give you an example. You want to talk about sacred geometry and everything, how all that goes. You know, you have the number 666, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a representation of the flesh. The flesh is evil. Now, this is something that's said through these traditions, these ancient traditions, backed up by science. Okay, what are we made of? Carbon, right? What is the carbon atom made of? 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. 666.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How would they know that?
Well, see, this goes into like not just like in Egypt, but the weird part is well, like you said, 6. Okay. Now you take a look at like the Babylonians. Okay. Now they developed one of history's like earliest and sophisticated mathematical systems, which was based off of the 60 numbering system, where they would calculate like the planetary movements. They were into lunar eclipses, solar cycles, and the calendar. And it's like we're doing a show now called Earth Growing Together, and we talk about like the lunar phases, which I actually got interested in first from the Old Farmer's Almanac, which still goes by the lunar phases, you know, and I find that pretty interesting. And like the solar cycles, people really don't understand what calendars originally started out as. You know, calendars actually started out for like taking and growing your crops. They needed to know what part of the season to freaking grow their crops at the right time, you know, and they stared up at the stars and they started calculating the stars according to the crops, and that's when all of a sudden they started coming up with their own belief systems out of that, you know. And oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about so-called calculation, lunar calculation machines. You could argue pyramids. Just a couple miles away from me, Stonehenge. Maybe a bit more than a couple miles, but yeah, Stonehenge being an obvious.
Exactly.
What about the other one?
Oh, yeah, Robert said, what about the other ones? I mean, there's actually a few hinges there.
Yeah.
You're muted, Robert, just so you know. But also, another thing I wanted to point out, because I don't want to leave India out, ancient Indian philosophy also connected mathematics directly with cosmology. You have have you guys ever heard of the yugas?
Yugas.
Refresh my memory.
It's large cycles of time, and they're called yugas, which were measured mathematically. Now, what happened was back then astronomers calculated the planetary periods with real, I mean, with a lot of good precision when it comes to the yugas. A lot of the sacred texts often describes reality through rhythm and proportion, and then they're also big on repetition and recursion. Now, later on, Indian yeah. So you know what I'm talking
Well, I was
about
gonna
there.
say, so with Gnosticism, so you have what were called the aeons. These were the conceptual. You can think of them as concepts or gods. Either one's correct. But the aeons were also is broken down to eons. Each one of them represented an age, 1,000 years, a millennium.
Mm-hmm.
And so also you have an aeon for 365 aeons in some Gnostic traditions. 365. I thought that was phenomenal. How they have that in the cosmology.
Yeah, and eons too. By the way, is something that I brought up when we were talking about Aleister Crowley, which I don't want to go back into and rehash, but he was really big on the Gnostics, and he would always talk about freaking eon. As a matter of fact, when he was in the pyramids, he did a freaking chant where he freaking mentioned incantation actually, where he mentioned the eon quite a few times in his incantation.
He contacted I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they were talking about music goes through is part of the math as well. Like they on they were talking everyone they were bringing it up about music has its tone to the universe and the math of it and all that. Like the certain keys, it represents tone. Uh, well, mathematics. Like however you lay down the keys, it represents a certain number and all that to it. They were talking about that on TV on the show, and they were saying that people when you listen to they when they play music, the string, the tones, and all that, and they were showing it, and they were uh, bringing that up about that, and I just find that pretty fascinating because music
Well,
and tone, the universe, as they say, tone, the the math with math and the frequencies of tones, like it tells you, like
I think he fired on to something big.
Well, he's right on to it because you know, like, okay, our reality. So I'm gonna go back to Gnosticism and quantum physics here, and in Christianity and other religious traditions, they say God spoke the universe into being. Okay, so sound with quantum uh, mechanics, they have found there's a quantum background to our reality. So there's like a static. You know, like you look at a TV, how static, you know, these little pixels come in and out of reality. It wasn't until a vibration was put through that quantum field that particles came into existence. Sound or vibration. So that's it's absolutely correct. Science lines up with Gnosticism. once again. And I like to refer to the human languages that we have, especially African language. You notice how Africans speak tonal. They speak like this. Every word has a difference. Da, 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 da. It almost sounds computeristic, like it's computerized. So yes, every vibration comes with a different concept or a different meaning or a different feeling, which is how we were able to code language to begin with, so that we can understand our reality and relate with it and relate to each other.
No,
So
when you
yes, absolutely.
when you bring that up too, now that actually brings up the whole thing with the Greeks, okay, and with Pythagoras, because a lot of people forget the fact that Pythagoras actually did a pilgrimage to freaking Egypt and to Babylon before he returned back to freaking Greece, and he had learned quite a bit from it. Now, if you want to talk about civilizations, now a civilization. Now, Greece was a civilization that embraced the mystical side of mathematics more fully than pretty much any other one other than Egypt. Okay. Now, here math basically became philosophy, and the movement was closely associated to Pythagoras because contrary to like popular belief, Pythagoras didn't just discover the theorem. He founded an entire philosophical community that believed numbers was the underlying substance of reality. You know what I mean? His followers actually believed that numbers possessed qualities. Music reflected mathematical harmony. Planets moved according to proportional relationships. And like the human soul itself actually followed like mathematical order according to him, and this was what eventually became known as like the harmony of the spheres. You know, now today a lot of people will tell you that the planets don't literally produce audible music, but they've actually discovered that there is vibrations. When you look at a freaking planet, you can actually see it vibrating. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah,
been
if you've ever heard of like, for example, I have to refer back to Gnosticism. So you also have the cult of Saturn, which is
hmm
kind of the other side of Gnosticism, like Satanism is to Christianity. So um, they found that Saturn was putting off a frequency that somehow correlates with human consciousness. The cult of Saturn, which in one way or another everybody worships, um, they worship the cube. Uh, in Gnosticism, you have Baphomet, whom was demonized by modern day Christianity, but Baphomet was a symbolism. Uh, in this full symbolism, Baphomet is sitting on top of a cube, which represents our 3D world, our third dimension. And sitting on top of it is his mastery of the 3D world. Now, on top of Saturn is a hexagon. It's the only planet in the solar system that has a hexagon. Now, a hexagon is a flat representation of a cube. It's a 2D representation of the 3D cube. So this is why you see all the black cubes around everywhere. These monuments, these black cubes. Even in Islam, you have that meteorite that's sitting inside of that black cube that the Muslims circle and worship. So it's yeah, the math is pretty much everywhere. But yeah, Saturn they said has a certain uh, vibrational scream, and
hmm
some of it's being projected out of this hexagonal uh, 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 shape at the North Pole of Saturn. Now, scientists have taken cracks at why there is the shape at the top of Saturn, and no scientist can really say for sure how it works or why it's there, because you and I both know you don't get straight lines like that in nature. Um, so they're saying that Saturn is sentient, or there's something near the surface or the core that is sentient that is making that hexagonal shape through a frequency that nobody understands. So yeah, sorry I cut you off.
Oh no, that's perfectly fine because um, when it comes to that, and you add it into what I was talking about with like the music aspects, you know what I mean? Where people did at the time believe that planets, harmony of the spheres, basically. When you take a look at some stuff that I've been talking with Nancy about with like the Schumann resonance, okay, that's another big thing when it comes to just here on Earth, okay. When they found out about freaking resonance and stuff like that, and then when you take a look at like the frequencies it puts out, and then you take a look at Pythagoras and how he viewed music with numbers. Okay, that is something that's interesting because he felt that the universe behaved like an enormous instrument that was tuned according to like this invisible ratio. And when you relate music to and numbers to Pythagoras, one of Pythagoras's greatest observation involved like vibrating strings. Okay, and when the length of a string is divided by like simple ratios, 1/2, 2/3, and 3/4, the resulting sound becomes harmonious. Okay, so when he discovered all this stuff, he discovered that it was mathematical. You know what I mean? So harmony could be measured, basically. You know what I mean?
Just like when the planets align,
Mm-hmm.
you have cosmic events that happen through the gravitational and I assume sound and vibrations from the planets. You know, it pulls up a solar flare that might cause an apocalypse, or it might bring another planet into focus that's on the outside of our solar system. Because there are several different planets outside of our solar system that we don't count as planets.
Right. For me, what I see it like is like he discovered that beauty itself appeared to like obey numerical laws, and when he realized this, what happened was is like that realization it eventually influenced music for well over 2,000 years. And that's not even talking about how Plato expanded on the idea, because Plato he inherited much of this mathematical worldview, I guess you could say. When he did the dialogue of Timaeus, he described the universe that was built according to like geometric principles. And the creator is supposed to construct the cosmos using mathematical relationships. And according to him,
we find beauty in symmetry. We
mm-hmm.
find beauty in symmetry, and this is why we have supermodels, and they're thought of having perfect symmetry in their faces. So yeah, we define beauty by symmetry.
Mm-hmm. According to him, order emerged from proportion, and chaos becomes cosmos through geometry. And like this concept is what influenced later philosophy. Now Plotinus, Plotinus is
Oh,
another.
Plotinus.
No,
I
see,
love Plotinus.
people forget about
Yeah.
Plotinus. When you hear about Neoplatonism, everybody thinks that they're talking about Plato, and they're not talking about Plato. They're talking about Plotinus. And he's the one who changes the question. Okay. So, like several centuries later, Plotinus expanded Plato's philosophy into what became known as Neoplatonism, basically. Rather than asking what is reality made of, Plotinus asks what allows mathematics itself to exist. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
So his answer begins with the one. And when you hear people talking about the power of the one these days, don't mistake that for what I'm about to say, because a lot of the stuff that you hear today when it comes to the one or non-duality and all that, that's just a lot of watered down spiritualism, basically. This is like the pure source of all of that, okay? Now his answer
Monad.
right. His answer begins with the one, and the one exists beyond mathematics, beyond thought, beyond being, and from the one flows intellect, and from the intellect comes the world soul, the monad.
Literally, that's Gnosticism. The monad,
Mm-hmm.
the limitless source. It's literally in the name Mo, or Amon, meaning singular, one, and Nad, meaning coming from. So coming from the one. And you have Barbelos, the first Aeon, the mother, she represented intellect. And then the next came was Christos, or Logos, the word, Christ. Uh, so what you said is exactly along line with Gnosticism.
Mm-hmm. Now, in that view, mathematics isn't God, though. Okay, it's
No, he just allows it. He's the background that allows reality. Right.
Mm-hmm. Now he's one of the first expressions of divine order is what it basically comes down to. You know what I mean? Because from the world so emerges the mathematic structure that organizes the physical universe. You see what I mean? And when I talk to people about the Axis Monday, you'll find a lot of things that returns to this Axis Monday that everybody's always talking about. And you can call it whatever you want to. You can call it the monad, you can call it the world soul, you can call it the cosmic egg, you can call it whatever you want, but it's basically an Axis Monday. Okay, and I'm not talking about the Yggdrasil from the Vikings. I keep every time I talk to Jackie, he throws that up like that's what I'm talking about. But there's different ones. When you talk about the Bodhi tree, that's the Axis Monday. It's one of, that's the representation of the Axis Monday. When Jesus was on the cross and he was taking in all the sin of every human being, he became an Axis Monday. He was returning sin back to the origin, to the center. Okay. Then you look at freaking the Yggdrasil. You know what I mean? You have the primordial, which represents the roots. Then you have our world, which would be the branches. Then the heavenly realm, which would be the top of the tree. Okay, and that whole world tree is the Axis Monday. You know what I mean?
Yggdrasil, yeah. It actually, whenever you look at the so-called fifth dimensional makeup of the universe, it's described as a tree because every choice that we make branches off into a different timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of looks like that. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you also bring up Christ on the cross because when you have the cube, when we've all done this in school, elementary school, where you have a box, you have a cube, and you break down the box, it takes the shape of a cross.
Yep. And the other day,
the cross is a two-dimensional representation of the cube, our
yep.
reality.
Now, before I forget this, because I know we were talking about it, and Mark had brought something up that I wanted to mention too today. Whenever we were talking the other day about the cosmic egg too. Now, the thing that I wasn't able to finish up on when it comes to the cosmic egg, Mark, is you well, actually, this is a good question I should ask you. Now, do you know what freaking the Big Bang was referred to before it was coined as the Big Bang Theory?
No, I can't think.
If you want to do me a favor and do a quick search, and you'll be amazed. What was it referred to before it was coined as the Big Bang? It'll blow your mind. And this is from a physics somebody who's into physics, an actual scientist, and it'll tell you straight up what he named it before it was coined the Big Bang. It'll blow your mind. So it's interesting too that you mentioned mathematics and Christianity, because that's one thing that actually I was wanting to talk about, because early Christians who were Christian thinkers inherited much of like the Greek philosophy. Now, like if you go and you look at early church fathers like Augustine, he viewed numbers as like reflections of God's eternal mind, order, measurement, proportion. And if you look at the way a lot of this stuff is, these became like signs of divine wisdom. You know what I mean? Was you able to find it, Mark?
I've got 3 different definitions. The dynamic evolving universe, which I've heard before. Explosion and or catastrophic universe, or the primeval atom.
It's actually the cosmic egg. The guy who came out with the theory originally, it was the cosmic egg. He called it the cosmic egg before it was coined as. He actually wrote it down on his freaking papers as the cosmic egg.
Okay. It was the states, as far as I can see, the earliest is 1930, so we have the primeval atom.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if that was on accident. They decided, no, we don't want to do that or something. But yeah, it was actually the cosmic egg.
Well, was that before or after Egypt?
It makes sense.
Robert's asking me questions off the thing, so he said, "What was it? What was you said, Robert?
Which one was it, before or after? Yeah, before Egypt was built, or after?
When it comes to what?
The egg.
Oh, the cosmic egg has been around since ancient Greece, possibly the Phoenicians, I believe. Most definitely, it probably came from Indo-European. Like
I just found a better one. Fireworks theory. Yeah, it comes from 1907, but yeah, fireworks theory. I like that one.
Okay, so now the whole thing that I was getting into was like with early Christian fathers like Augustine. Now he viewed numbers as like reflections of God's eternal mind, like when it comes to like order, measure, proportions. These all became like signs of the divine wisdom. Now, This would explain why medieval cathedrals were filled with like geometric symbolism, and architecture became like theology built in stone. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about like the fact that most people in Middle Ages couldn't read, so they did all of this pictorial stuff so that they could actually see the story in action, because they couldn't read. But then when you start doing more research, you start finding out like these cathedrals are literally built with with
Sacred geometry. Yeah.
sacred geometry.
In mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all over the place. Like all of these huge cathedrals that you walk by and they're all old and dilapidated now. That stuff was built on sacred geometry. And even the ones that aren't, go and check it out when it comes to like these big cathedrals that were built back in the Middle Ages.
I was going to say, my cathedral that's fallen down. Remember, I'm in the UK. I've got cathedral still standing from, I don't know, 12th, 13th century, if not earlier.
That's what I'm saying, dude. You need to take a walk with your camera. I would just love to freaking see some of the camp stuff over there, because you're in Devonshire, dude. You know what I mean? That's where it all began. I mean, it's pretty close. I'm not saying.
Okay, next time I spend a day in Exeter, which I do quite often, I will.
They said too, like over there, the like Agent Aliens. They said that, well, with the rocks within it, they do pick up like sounds. It does electric and sound, like picks up harmonic, if I'm saying that right, of Earth, and like it transmits, but to where it in syncs with the universe. Way I know that might sound corny or however, but I'm going by what they say. But it picks up going through it goes, and like each planet has its own synchronized sound, frequency of a sound, and that's how each planet is, the size and like what it's made out of. It all works together. And like with the stones and all that, there's one down the road from that one that Roger was just saying about the stones around. There's one that's made of the wood, and it was buried, but it was both made a whole full circle, and then two more in the center of it as well, too, farther down.
Oh, that's just the beginning. There's one actually at the edge of Scotland, right? It's on top of a freaking cliff, okay, and it's literally just like freaking Stonehenge, and there's actually a super Stonehenge that's supposed to be like huge. It's
yeah, that's the one. It's made out of wood.
Yeah, I know the wood one. The wood one is cool too. Don't get me wrong, but this one is like even bigger than that one. This is supposed to be like a super freaking Stonehenge, and it's right there in the same general area. It's just completely amazing with what's going on over there. I can't believe people don't like really get into to go into those sites and check. And in the Isle of Man. Don't even get me started on the Isle of Man. That is probably the most amazing freaking island on the entire planet. Just putting it out there. There's stuff that's happened there that is just, it'll blow your mind. I mean, and it goes back all the way back. And and they still have pagan rule. You know what I mean? Like they still, it doesn't go according to the Irish or the English. It's still pagan law on the island of Man.
Yeah.
And I
That
find
is,
it fascinating. You bring up Stonehenge and these circular constructs, and then you look at the Hadron Collider, right?
yeah,
You have uh, Kali, the goddess of destruction, and a circular halo and a statue that's right there at CERN. Okay, so what's the whole point of the CERN? They want to break down these particles to see the subparticles that break off from them, and then what particles break off from those. And so they're literally just breaking reality down through the action of destruction, just so they can see that cosmic background that is the mathematics of the universe.
yeah.
Oh, I've got one in India. They combine the two as construction of the temple. It has its own. I'm going to try to say it,
Harmonics. Harmonics.
And as construction during that time, they used math with harmonics to create the place, and it has its own frequencies on each of the titan. Each person get there and start pumping it, and it releases its own specific tone in frequency. It does in India, and
Yeah.
it's
Also,
unique and it's nice sound.
Also, within, so I'll come back to Baphomet. So, in the body of Baphomet, the solar plex, the stomach area, is a circular symbol, sort of like the Ouroboros, okay, like the serpent eating his tail. So people will tell you that with Baphomet pointing one hand towards the sky and one hand towards the cube, they're saying it's saying above, as above, so below. Right? That's the ancient esoteric axiom there. But it's not only that; it is telling you solve at coagula, one of the names of God. Okay, solve at coagula, which is Latin for destroy to create. So it's literally telling you, it's pointing to the firmament, saying destroy, and it's pointing to the ground or the cube, saying create. Now that can also be taken in reverse as well. Destroy the matter, destroy physical reality to see the firmament, to see the heavens. So I really, Christianity, to the modern day Christians, they, that's the devil. Baphomet's the devil. No, it's we speak in symbols, okay? Symbols which are logos, the word, Christ, logos, okay? This is how we understand our reality. This is the bridge between our reality and the next, okay? For those people that want to call it heaven or the fifth dimension or the dimensions beyond, or whatever. It's all in the symbolism. And this is ancient. This is ancient symbolism. Okay?
Yeah.
You want to talk about the ancient? The knowledge has already been there that our physicists today are just catching up to. And it's profound.
Now, the one thing too that I do want to point out when you said that is like that goes with Kali too. If you look at Kali, everybody always looks at the evil, and the bad things that Kali represented, but it was us. Kali actually represented destruction and creation, and because
Right.
they believe that he destroys the universe and then recreates it into something new. You know, and I do find that pretty interesting, and nobody ever says the full story of them. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the representation of Kali is pretty dark, you know what I mean? But that's not the full story when it comes to that, you know. And another thing,
being the wife of Shiva,
yeah,
and that their unity is what gives the creation. Their child, which they gave birth to a god, and its head got cut off, and they put an elephant's head on it instead. So you have all these animal-faced sort of depictions of God or Christ. You know, again, I reference back to Baphomet. The head, the goat's head, is a total different representation. It doesn't mean the devil at all, despite what modern-day Christians will tell you. You have to go into the actual esoteric writings. You have to go to the Bhagavad library. You got to look at some of the paganism to understand the mother, how the mother was cut out of Christianity, turned into the Holy Spirit when the Holy Spirit was the mother. And so you got to look at all these things, and it shows you, and it all circles back to our beginning and creation of our reality.
yeah. Now, another thing I wanted to point out too, before we get too far into this, because it's getting close to an hour, but like when you take a look at like the Islamic Golden Age, okay, a lot of people don't even know his name, but Al-Kindi. I mentioned him before in one of the earlier episodes this year, but you have scholars like Al-Kindi who basically preserved and expanded the Greek mathematic thought, and he believed that like harmony, astronomy, optics, and music, as well as mathematics, all reflected like a unified creation. Now,
Mysticism.
yeah.
I love it.
Now, basically, what he demonstrated was that mathematics wasn't isolated from philosophy; they were one and the same, and it was like one expression of order established through creation, basically. Now, when you look at stuff like that, and you look at like modern science, okay, modern science often quite a bit actually, it reaches like the same conclusions, or surprisingly similar conclusions that the ancient philosophers reached. You know what I mean? Like if you look at physics, they describe reality through equations. You have chemistry through ratios. You have biology through patterns, and then you have astronomy through predictable laws, basically. You know, even Einstein remarked that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that
that guy from India.
it's comprehensible. You know what I mean?
But
Yeah.
he's intelligent about the math as well. I can't begin to pronounce his name correctly. Muhammad. He's the top in his field.
Well, he used to be. He's dead now.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is they use his materials today still in mathematics, in space construction, and all that, whatever types of math. He just didn't fill in one, but he made different organizations of different types of math.
Well, see, that's the weird thing about that too, because Oppenheimer as well. Okay, now I know where you're going with all that, and it is true, but that also goes along with Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer freaking was really, really big into Buddhism and Hinduism. I believe whenever that quote that he made, whenever freaking they set off the first atomic bomb, he freaking stated it, and it was I believe that was Hinduism, wasn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That he was destroyer of worlds.
That the destroyer of worlds. Okay, now a lot of people don't know the story about Oppenheimer, but he was constantly handing out freaking Hindu texts, the Mahara, whatever they call that. But he was constantly handing it out. He even though he was a big scientist, he was really big into that religion. I mean, he practiced it faithfully. Later on, whenever we do another show, or before we do another show, I'll pull up that name of that guy. I know who you're talking about, though. He was a genius. And everything he believed in, everything he believed in mathematically had to go along with his religion. I don't know if he was Buddhist or Hindu, but I
Yeah, he was India.
And
Well,
that's why
well,
I like
no. No.
Just because he's
and
from
then you have to understand. Well, you also have to understand the orders of magnitude. So, I mean, you have, and this is blasphemy for Christians, modern day Christians, but I've said this before on different shows that we've done. You have the orders of magnitude, especially when we talk about AI. So I bring in orders of magnitude. You have the monad, the limitless background radiation, whatever you want to call it. From all things are possible. The source, and so you come out with matter scattered everywhere, right? You have nebulas that form. These nebulas turn into galaxies. The galaxies are filled with stars that form. The stars form their own planets. The planets possibly form life forms. These life forms have are formed of organs, and the organs are formed of organelles, and the organelles are formed with cells. The cells are formed with with even more micro things. You get down to the atoms, and you get down to the subatomic particles. At every level, you're going to find mathematics, a way to devise its or explain its presence. That's mathematics.
They were saying about the pyramids, about how each pyramid has its own sound frequency and all that. And because they did a thing that people were testing a theory that they were trying to find out that will work. Well, they think that the microwave beams comes out because they were using two different types of chemicals to pour into where they merge and to create.
Yeah, this is where they're. Well, see that's what I'm saying. You gotta.
I know.
I mean, well, they're trying to make out like the pyramids were like a power source and stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, for me, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just saying I don't buy that.
I mean, yeah, that's. I agree with you. That's just really stretching it.
Yeah.
Esoterics. Let me tell you something about the esoterics, Robert. Okay, you can believe in ufology and paranormal all you want, but if you just get in and you do studies on just the esoterics, you'll find out that fact is stranger than fiction.
Yes.
Okay, there are so many amazing things just in esoterics, which is grounded in history, philosophy, and facts. Okay, according to what was written. Not saying that it's all true or not, just that this is what was written.
Yeah.
It's more interesting. It's actually more interesting than talking about UFOs and if we came from freaking ancient aliens or forgotten freaking what lost civilizations. That's what it's called. Because, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there could be possibilities, I don't know. But I'm just saying that the facts are actually stranger than the fiction when it
Yeah.
comes to this
Oh,
stuff.
well, I was referring.
I'm gonna give you an example here. We were talking about mathematics here, and the fact that everything has a computational value of some sort. You know, the whole black hole thing. They're talking about information. So let's get down to the nitty gritty since we're coming to the end of the show here. Information. Physicists are saying information cannot be destroyed. Information. Everything's coded with information. That's what we're talking about here. So they don't use the term mathematics. They use the term information. So the information that codes you, an apple, information that makes up a very electron of an atom. It has information that it carries. Now they're saying information can't be destroyed, but when you get into black hole science, which is absolutely mind blowing when you think of a black hole, I equate it to a monad. Black hole. They say so when it swallows up matter, okay, it absolutely destroys information. Now, I'm not quite so sure about that because when you get to the point of where it's collecting matter to create a singularity, you're still collecting matter, and all that information is being condensed. However, it is also theorized that the event horizon in itself strips all matter. I'm sorry, strips all information from the matter, and this is like where we get Hawking radiation as it bleeds back into our universe. You know, so there are these sort of things that yeah, absolutely mind blowing. You don't need to be talking about ancient aliens to get your kicks. Uh, there's mysteries, scientific mysteries that are just absolutely phenomenal. Um, I think ancient alien stuff. That's a simple explanation for some things, sure. Nothing that we can prove as of right now, but we do have the instruments and computational abilities, especially with quantum computing coming up, to be able to figure out these equations. There's so many equations when we talk about black holes, things like that, that end up in infinity, which should be mathematically, I don't want to say impossible, but that's the other side of infinity is an impossibility. So it is absolutely mind blowing. I love quantum physics. I love quantum mechanics. I wish I had the mathematical prowess to get back into these things, but I just don't. But I do love the concepts, and I do love the science and the logic behind it all. But yeah, look up black holes. Look up information.
All right.
And the nature of information in itself. They're
I'm,
theorizing that neutrons and protons are larger particles. That these particles are made up of strings that carry information. They're theorizing that these atoms, these particles, have their own DNA as they unravel when they're destroying them in these colliders.
mm-hmm.
The information can only be seen for billionths of a second after they are destroyed, but the fact that the information is there and it floats off into the distance, which is theorizing that there are even smaller subatomic particles than we could ever imagine. I mean, a neutron would be the size of a star compared to a grain of sand. They're theorizing that there are particles that smaller, that much more smaller than a Planck measurement. So, when you look at it, infinity. When you come out with infinity in the mathematics, you probably could go into infinity. Because what if we got the technology to look at those particles and we figure out that those particles are inhabitants for a smaller dimensional creature,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're made up of smaller particles. Technically, it could go on for an infinity, because when you talk in dimensions, you have third dimension, second dimension, zero dimension is incomputational. You can't compute a coordinate size. Zero dimension, you can only place it somewhere. It has no. It doesn't take up mass, width, height. It's just a coordinate. That's how small things can get and go even smaller.
You know what really blows me away about all this stuff, though? What it really comes down to for me is I always ask the question: is mathematics actually discovered or is it invented? You know what I mean? And like, do numbers exist independently of the mind? And I've had conversations with this about a few times. Now, the whole thing that really blows people's mind is when I ask them, like, if humanity or humans disappeared, would mathematics still be here? Would it remain true? You know what I mean? And the
Well,
really,
that is the other question, because there are a lot of physicists that say that our reality around us requires our consciousness, requires our observation.
yeah.
So the double slit test, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, it would be here, but we call it comprehending in a different way.
Well, another thing that gets me.
Wave particle science. Our observation turns a wave into a particle, and vice versa.
Now, see, that is a good way of looking at it, but let me also put this to you too, okay? When it comes to history, and I'm talking ancient history all the way up to now, okay, across all these freaking civilizations that are separated by thousands of years, there's one idea that keeps returning, and that is reality appears ordered. You'll always hear people talk about chaos and order, okay? And chaos is usually represented as something that's evil, where order is represented as something that's good. And that's always the common theme with a lot of these civilizations. And I do find that weird that it stays all the way through all of these civilizations. You know, and that's expressed through like Egyptian temples. You have Babylonian astronomy, Indian cosmology, well, Greek philosophy, like we were talking about. Even Islam, through their science, had it. You know what I mean? And then you look at now, we talk about that stuff through modern physics, like you've been talking about. You know what I mean? And it's just we repeat it. It, you know what I mean? These are like mathematical encounters that structure everything beneath like the visible world, kind of like, you know what I mean?
Well, from chaos comes order.
Mm-hmm.
That's the motto that's on our dollar bill, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
So you have the eye of providence, and that saying, I think they're trying to tell us something.
Well, look at it. They're saying that like the ancients saw things. Order is like sacred. Okay, and then you take a look at like modern science, and modern science always treats order as like natural law. Natural law is the big thing. You know what I mean? And both of them began with the same observation. You know, the universe behaves as though it like follows rules that existed long before we ever arrived to discover them. You know.
Or think of it like this: with since they say it grows, the universe is, so does the frequency and the music tones of math.
You're still stuck on that. We passed that up like 15 minutes ago, dude.
Well, no, I'm just saying.
Well,
They're
Okay.
saying how.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about frequencies on
Well,
another planet and shit.
Well, no, I'm talking about the universe.
Yeah,
See?
you're talking about frequencies in the universe.
Yeah, and it changes, it alters
Yeah,
by
you're
the
right.
size of it.
You are right. Well, you
well,
know,
so the idea of consciousness. So okay, from a standpoint, let's say from the perspective of a photon, a piece of light, a photon. A photon does not experience time. A photon, from the moment it is created to the moment it is absorbed, no time has elapsed. It's instant for that photon. Okay, we are matter. We are light that we call matter. That's pretty much frozen, which is why we are able to, uh, with our consciousness, with our observation, we experience time. This fourth dimension. It is because of light, which is our background, we are able to exist. Their mathematics, which is infinite, because the closer matter reaches to the speed of light, time dilates. So the closer you get to the speed of light, time slows down. So when you get to the speed of light, there is no time. So when you think about that, it's you want to say is is mathematics independent of our observation, of our knowledge, of our consciousness? Is it independent? Well, that's a good question because without us looking at light or any other thing, things are happening in an instant. So you kind of have a duality, so to speak, with the question. Both answers are correct, I do believe.
mhm.
And I want to go back to the whole. Of course, I'm a one-note pony today, one trick pony today, with like the Gnosticism. Okay, you have the infinite dark, the source, the static of the universe, the chaos, primordial evil, the prime evil, right? And out of that comes order. Okay, this is the order of things in which we operate. Now, it is said, okay, God is the source, right? The original God, but you also have a God on the other side, the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, the Archon, whatever you want to call it, which is a representation of the physical universe. Now, something I find fascinating, I'm going to go back to Freemasonry here. You have Albert Pike. Now, Albert Pike wrote a book. I don't want to mention, but he wrote a book. If anybody doesn't know who Albert Pike is, he was I believe he was a Civil War general from the South, whatever. He was the High Grand Head Dragon Master Grand Duke, whatever, of 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 the Freemasonry. And so, but in this book, he wrote, he said, Adonai is God, but so is Lucifer. Adonai being the source, the creation, and Lucifer being the creation. So he says Adonai is God, but so is Lucifer. And there's this whole branch of Luciferianism that comes from that school of thought, and I'm not going to get into all that, but I find that there's that duality. Some traditions say that there's a war between good and evil, and then it clashed, and it made matter, and it made the physical world. And so any way you look at it, you find a mathematical element to it, opposites. You find light and dark. You find good and evil. You find right and left. This is the duality. Even when Christ was on the cross, he had somebody next to him who wasn't innocent, who was crucified, and then to his other side, he had a hardened criminal who was guilty of everything he was said to have done. And Christ was right there in the middle. You have this joining force of these things in order to give us what we have: chaos and order. We are a mixture of both. We are structured, but we have freedom. Our freedom causes either more chaos or more creation. And that's where our consciousness, where our mind, our souls come into play. And it's just how you apply things, whether it's mathematical or philosophical. I guess it really doesn't matter. We are here. And I'm glad to have done the show with you guys.
I'm glad you did it too.
I gotta go.
So before we head out, I wanted to say again that the universe behaves as though it follows rules that exist long before we ever arrive to discover them. Now that raises the central question that will guide the next stage of the esoteric agenda that we're doing right now. And with that being said, all I gotta say is if mathematics is the language of reality, who or what wrote the language? That's what the next question's gonna be. So stick around for another episode of Esoteric Agenda, and we will move forward with this. And if you want to, before you go, you want to tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, B?
Well, so they will have to hijack a radio station, a high-powered one, not using low-powered one. You got to focus that beam at the ionosphere, right? Heat up a little bit of layer of that, send a GPS signal from one of the satellites to beam down through that, creating some interferometry.
Okay, so let me cut this short.
Tunnel into my brain.
If you want to contact B, contact him through me on Teams or on Element Matrix at Rogers Hangout. You can also contact him through me on Discord at the Wonderful World of Weirdness. I'm also on minds.com at Roger_Hansen and on Strange Stories at minds.com as well. Besides that, you can also get in touch with me on X, Roger Hansen at ROGLOL1973. That's how you can get in touch with him and Robert until freaking they get their stuff together. They're having social issues at the moment. So with that being said, Mark, how can people get in touch with you? I'm sorry for calling you Tan.
Cheers. It's a lot more easier than the explanation. All you need is a web browser and an internet connection, and log on to minds.com and look for the username Medworthy.
All right. So with that being said, if you guys like what you heard, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give feedback down in the comment section. We'd love to hear what you said. It's late at night, so I'm not going to do the whole spill. Thank you for watching. Thank everybody who's on the panel for being here. This was a great show, and I appreciate you for being here. So that being said, let's go ahead and end the show. Thanks for watching, guys.